and rejected and sent back. And this particular gentleman is swearing up and down to his followers that he can prove that. Well, I want to clarify. Nothing was sent to The Hague, so to speak. The Hague is a city in the Netherlands. The documents were not an application for recognition or an opinion or permission. We don't need that. We are free Americans. The documents that were sent to the the Office of Private International Law at The Hague, not the World Court, not an application. It was a notice. They were used like the world's largest newspaper. There is nothing for them to reject or return. They have signed for it. They have accepted it when it was delivered, and that is all we needed. The signatures are all the proof that we need, that the people of America have stood up and declared themselves a free people. So, once again, if you want leaders, look in the mirror. It takes every single one of us doing what some of us have already started. All of these things are equally important. There are a lot of issues in your community level. Anita has only touched on a very little bit of it. There's so much that we all need to know and learn. But they can't beat us when we stand up and say, okay, we're free. We want to remain that way. What is it we need to learn? What is it we need to know in order to maintain that? And as Anita pointed out the other day, and I just love you for having said this to me, you can't clean house if you don't know where the dirt is. So it is our job and our goal to expose the dirt so you can go out there and clean it up.
And you know, people are starting, even just in my neighborhood, we have this newsletter, We Were Fighting This Road. And so I looked at the paperwork, okay, and it was just obvious what had happened. I mean, I could just see what had happened, and I went, oh, my God, these people are creeps. So my job was to tell them that I understood this Regional Planning Commission and try to start educating them on how this thing was playing out and why we have a little rat's nest in our city council. But what I heard on the phone from all of the people, it was just fascinating, because I must have called 10 of these people who are involved in trying to fight this road connector, is what happened to city council. And I'm listening. I'm trying to hear what their point of view is. And, you know, when I investigate my locality, trying to figure out how much they know and what their point of view is and whether or not they're even unhappy yet sort of helps me know, and when you guys do the same thing, it'll help you know what direction you might need to want to go to either do more research or share more research. I mean, there's two things. You figure it out and then you share it. What they were actually reflecting on was that the public-private partnership governance was announced by Al Gore in 1999. Okay? This is what they're reflecting. They can't figure out why the city is behaving that way. Because before then, even though I understand and agree with Chris, there seemed to be an interest in the city council to work with the people. Even though they are a corporation, they seem to be really quite interested in working with the people. But once this public-private partnership came along, then they have changed their demeanor completely, and they now believe it is their job to manage the people. And by manage, I mean we go to a city council meeting, they have all hired public relations people. Their job is to spin whatever they're doing to the people in their community and make it sound good. Just so you people know, when you get in there and you look at it, don't get too discouraged because it's probably going on everywhere. And once we know what it is, then we can start figuring out, how to expose it and how to combat it. But
right, instead of working with the people, they've decided to manage them.
Exactly.
That is not a free constitutional republic, people.
No, that is not. And they have used the corporate model on everything they do. They all speak corporate speak. But including when I went to talk to the people at the Regional Planning Commission, I made an appointment with the executive director, a professor friend of mine, had an issue that we really wanted to talk to him about. That meeting took place with their public relations person. He said very little, and she managed the meeting.
May I, Anita?
Yes.
Well, what we may not note on the obvious, here in our little locale of Las Vegas, Nevada, our planning commissions, our PUCs, all use the Delphi method of mass control and manipulation techniques. And you might notice this is the 5-minute, very strict guidelines of allotted time to exercise your First Amendment rights to freedom of speech, to oppose or make suggestions to their programs. Additionally, since they've become these corporate Soviet-style governance models, the federal government has offered them many benefits in the forms of monetary support and grants and gifts, but they all have these corporate strings attached that creates a public-private cooperation agreement, right, whereby they are owned by the federal government and they are conspiring against us with them.
Right. There's no doubt about it.
There's another twist on this, guys.
Yes.
Everybody wants to know who's responsible. And the problem is that when you have more than one person involved in making a decision, nobody is, unless the individual citizen and or group makes those people specifically responsible. What this does is it puts them in the legal position of reparation for anything that goes over budget and anything that is a continuous expense above what was projected. The basis for counsel, in terms of a council, if you'll notice, you have legal counsel. That is always a plural. This means more than one individual. There is no one individually responsible to uphold anything. This was done several times legally in Florida when I was living there, and it worked very well. And what happens is that because you have a supposed vote, which is usually rigged, it is the council per se, which is a fictitious entity and cannot be held responsible according to corporate law. So my suggestion is that one of the things that's going to change is the ideology of a city, county, state, whatever, council. You're going to have specific individuals in charge who makes the final decision, who can be held specifically responsible. And it doesn't matter how big the numbers are in terms of the debt or whatever's incurred. But what it does is that when you have a strict, singular, responsible individual, a lot of these, quote, projects, and I'll name one, sewer and water, replacing septic systems, and all this sort of stuff, road extensions, etc. All of the public projects, and this is a study that's been done several times, on average, and this is a general average but accurate, end up running 30% above all projected costs. Now, there's got to be something in the woodwork there that doesn't fit. And what it is that no individual is responsible.
Right.
To go along with the council system of government, you do not have direct legal input by the citizens. Every decision is strictly up to the council. This is the difference between, as was mentioned, Soviet-style governance and free Republican forms of government. This is one of the base differences. Until we just have the capability of changing that system, we're going to be stuck with arbitrary decisions of all kinds, dealing with everything.
Well,
I hate to kind of a wet blanket on it, but that's basically where you're at.
Okay, that just fits with everything I've discovered. Just fits just like a shoe. But here's the thing. They just redid their charter, right? I was at a meeting when two lawyers showed up. They knew this small group of people was going to meet. They brought two attorneys. Would you know it? Well, one announced to us that they were redoing their corporate charter. Now, they weren't asking the people what was going to go in this new charter. The lawyers were there. You know, it never went to a vote. Do we want to adopt this new charter? So by doing it this way, they renewed their charter. They picked the terms. They can, at one point, you know, they were talking about getting rid of a mayor and just having a city manager. This is common in this new structure, this PPP structure that's going on across the country. Exactly what you're saying, Drake. They eliminate the elected mayor who would be responsible. They give you a city council, and then the city council hires a manager. Now, the public is pretty much locked out of any input. We have recalled one council member. We found out there was a procedure to do that, and that seemed to intimidate them. They didn't like the idea of this public campaign, and they got recalled. But the structure is the problem, as Drake is pointing out. That's what is happening here. The structure is the problem. Now, how do we get rid of these corporate charters, Drake?
Okay. First of all, you got to understand the origin of this.
Okay.
Try the United Nations.
Okay.
And if that doesn't explain a lot to anybody, I suggest anybody on this call who is not familiar with the United Nations to simply go on the website and read their charter. It is going to mess your mind up, but it's real and it's there. And there's several links. Explore the links. Agenda 21 is listed as one of the links. All of this stuff that everybody's been talking about that's nasty is in full public view. Okay. In terms of reducing what we have in the way of governance presently, and this goes all the way from the local to the federal to international, the process has been started. Part of it was the project that we undertook on notification. Another part of it is having the backing of sufficient force, this is the military, and voice, which is the public, in order to create enough exception to the manner in which business is being conducted that action can be taken. That action is coming. I just got done spending 3 hours on the phone discussing various items, to include specifics on exactly what's going to happen and when. I was apprised as to dates, times, manner of operation, and the whole 9 yards. And I have stated before that as I learn things, I would put them out. Okay, I can only put out a certain amount of things because these things are sensitive. In other words, if you're going to go do something, and I'll give you an example, a lead person who would be in full view, who would be the person going to take out that council member, remove them from office, was the driving force, had an accident, it might have some impact on the effort to remove that person from the council. this is the basic manner in which